Good evening to my few viewers. I'm sorry. Hold on. I know this wasn't scheduled. Well, it is scheduled. I've been doing Q&As on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, but I've been absent. I've been traveling. I've been out of town a few times this month, and actually, you know, I forgot how to travel. I have to be honest with y'all. It used to be I could get up and go, gather my stuff, pack, do what I got to do, get back in town, keep it rolling. But since quarantine, going out of town and trying to make my way, it's like my whole life falls apart. It's like you take for granted the things you take for granted until you're back on it. So anyway, I've had to make a couple of trips to Kansas City and do some other things to take care of some business. So that's the reason for my absence. I appreciate everyone who's been patient with the BroDiallo broadcast, with my absence from the radio broadcast, my Q&As, book reviews, everything. But now I'm back. I'm settled back in Chicago. I don't have any plans for any trips until I believe July, but I think that's going to be late July. So we're good. I'm here. I'm settled. So we'll be back on schedule. Book reviews, BroDiallo radio broadcast, of course, Q&As, lining up guests for the Q&As, all of that. So, and again, thank you very much for being patient. And middle finger to Enterprise Rental Car, who said they were going to waive my rental car fee for returning my rental car $50 fee, and then y'all put it on there, and y'all told me y'all were going to waive it, and then when my wife called y'all reneged on the promise. I mean, who would ever thought that a multinational corporation would lie to you? So my aunt would say, you a fool for believing the white man. You talk all this stuff about the white man, but you quick to believe what the white man tell you. That's what my aunt told me one time when I was complaining about being swindled. So it's my fault. Victim blaming. Anyway, I'm back. You're familiar with the Q&A, comments, questions, discussions. Normally, what I've been doing, if I don't have a guest, which I have some guests lined up, I got to get back to them. But when I don't have a guest or an expert or a personality to tag team the Q&A with, I normally go off of Monday's radio broadcast. So last radio broadcast was the Genocide cycle. So but since it's been a few weeks ago, I just decided to make it an open Q&A, and then I'll go back and title or put in the hashtags after we talk. So that's how we're going to do it this evening. And I appreciate you being with me, and I look forward to trying to either answer your questions or listening to your comments or criticisms. And if you ask a question and we don't have an answer, or if I don't have an adequate answer, maybe we can suss it out and research it together. So that's how we've been doing it. I enjoy doing this. It allows me to, instead of just, articulating what I think is of importance and focus, it allows me to engage with my listeners, find out what you guys are thinking, what you guys are interested in, or what you guys want to know from me or about me. So it's open. And I'm ready and very interested in what questions you may have for me. So let me just put up the comments. We're all ready. Thank you, Valencia. I'm happy to be back, and I appreciate y'all being patient with me. Kandake, hello, sis. Again, thank you again for the shout outs. Very happy to be back. Like I said, I've been to Kansas City and back a couple of times, and man, Kansas City, Midwest, but I can't even say Midwest because I'm in the Midwest as we speak. I'm here in Chicago, so it ain't like I'm out of the Midwest, but it's a small city. It's super predominantly white city, but I ain't gonna get into Kansas City business. I'm not there anymore, but I do plan to go back. I was born and raised there, and most of my family's there. So I have to watch what I say about Kansas City because eventually I'll touch ground there eventually. So, and many, my cousins and uncles are telling me, yeah, we don't be saying that, but we watch your show. So You know, I don't think that was like something to encouragement. I think that was a veiled threat. So I know Uncle Chris, cousin Tyler, all of y'all, I know y'all told me y'all be watching, so I ain't gonna say nothing about nothing. But it was curious. I was there for a funeral. And when we were at the ceremony, there were a lot of prayers. There were a lot of pontificating. There was a lot of emoting. There was a lot of talk of Jesus and the afterlife. And of course, my sons came. It was the matriarch, the grand matriarch of our family, calmly and peacefully passed on of what you some would say to heaven, some would say to the ancestral realm. I don't believe in any of that because there's no evidence of it. I think when people die, they go on to what I call oblivion. You know, the only way you live on is through your memories and your family. So I don't believe that my grandmother will be able to return and intervene on my behalf or is watching over me. I don't see any evidence of that. I understand how comforting those delusions may be, but I don't have a problem with people believing, you know, an angel's on their shoulders. The problem it comes when there are some people who literally stake their well-being and their future on that. They will put themselves in situations, or they will endure situations and fail to take appropriate action because they believe some supernatural force from the hereafter or from the great beyond will intervene on their behalf. That's when I have serious issues with people's beliefs about the afterlife or the ability of supernatural beings or deceased ancestors to intervene on our behalf or act in our interest. And I've had people tell me that I'm not legitimately Black, that I'm not African, that I don't understand what it is to be African if I don't believe in the hereafter or in the ancestors. It's not that I lack belief in ancestors. I don't have to believe in ancestors. I know that I have ancestors. I know people, biological lineage and my ideological, cultural, genetic lineage. I know that I have ancestors because I've met my elders who have become ancestors. So it's not that I don't believe in ancestors. It's not that I don't honor ancestors. It's not even that I'm against worshiping ancestors. The only thing I have opposition to in relationship to ancestors is the belief or the teaching people that our ancestors can somehow intervene on our behalf in a supernatural way from a realm that's beyond our comprehension or reach. That's it. Everything else y'all do, erect a shrine to your ancestors, even call out to your ancestors, sing and praise in honor of your ancestors, evoke your ancestors' spirit, you know, and carry on your ancestors' name. All that stuff I'm down with. But to think that your ancestor has some magical power to impact material reality after they're dead, I think that can lead us to, and has led us to, there's a lot of evidence that it's caused us to make decisions that if we were more scientific, that we wouldn't make. I've seen people personally that I care for that follow Ifa, Yoruba, Akan, the Kemetic traditions, that I've seen them take actions and make decisions that they otherwise would not have if they didn't have those beliefs. And the only thing worse than hoping for something is allowing that hope to dictate or to guide your actions based on something that's not possible, not real, or not demonstrable. What's up, Phil? I'm glad to be back too. Good to see and hear from you. Memories, family, and works. Yes, that's what I call it. You know, I think we would do better to in honoring our ancestors by understanding their biological and material legacy, as opposed to developing some beliefs around their supernatural impacts or supernatural powers. That's me. The ancestors watching should encourage action, not discourage it, though. Yeah, but they're not watching. So if you're taking action based on ancestors watching you, and then, I mean, well, here's the thing about ancestors watching you. My great-grandfather, Grandpa Bowie, Sonics Bowie, was probably my first and most dominant father figure in my mind. I know what he wanted from me and for me. I know what he expected from me. So in that sense that he has imprinted on me and is a dominant force in my memory and my childhood and youthful experiences, the things he taught me, technical things and ideological things that he taught me. So I reflect on what he said and who he was and how, the example that he set and the request he made of me and what he told me I should do and the things he told me I shouldn't do. You know, like one thing he told me to do is that I should read Proverbs and Psalms, and that Proverbs was the in the Bible was the instruction manual for young men. And so there's some stuff in there about proper hygiene and stuff like that as a young man. I'm like, oh, it's interesting. So in that way, he watches me. But his watch over me is psychological. It's really biological. My intellectual and emotional attachment to him, and and my brain's the way my brain recalls those memories and reconstructs those memories, and the way I call back and think back on those memories, and then how I obligate myself, how I put it upon myself. Not because there will be some grand reward after I die or some grand punishment as I die, but out of the respect I have for him. So in a sense, you could say your ancestors watch over you, but in a literal sense, they don't. They don't. You know, and like I said, in a time where Africans were free and sovereign, when we were dwelling on our land and functioning in our own space and not under perpetual threat of genocide and other insidious forces, I think having beliefs that were as fanciful, having myths and folklore and believing all these fanciful things were fine. But when you're under the gun, when you're under genocide, when you're being displaced, when your ecosystems are being destroyed, I think fantasy and fanciful beliefs are a commodity we just can't afford right now. It's just a state of mind and a state of being. We have to be really real, keep it a buck. You know, that's one thing people say about when people are under siege. You got to keep it 100, because basically we all we got. You know, and when you're under time of threat, you know, if there's someone coming to harm you, and you're gonna, if you could say, well, take for instance, you get a promotion and you're like, oh, thank God I got that promotion, or oh, my ancestors uplifted me. Okay, fine, that's neither here nor there. But if somebody's coming to harm you and you say, God or ancestors protect me, and you don't take any action, that's, you know, the very thing that can uplift you and inspire you can sometimes harm or debilitate you. And I'm just keeping it real. And I know a lot of folks, like I said, I've been told that I'm not even worthy to call myself an African if I don't believe in the ancestors and the great hereafter and all that. And if that's the case, if that's one of the prerequisites for being an African, I don't see why or how that would be. But if anybody that defines believing in things that can't be confirmed or demonstrated as a prerequisite for being African, so be it. I guess I'm out of the club. Yes, I agree. Sinoban de Jesus, the ancestors' legacy and work should be informing the action of today and tomorrow. Yes. And that doesn't mean we do exactly what they did, because we got a lot of people who honor the ancestors by trying to duplicate or replicate exactly what the ancestors did. You got somebody living in the year 2021, and they're trying to live as Africans did in 15,000 BC. Like literally, I've seen brothers in New York City on the subway wearing traditional Egyptian garb with the skirt carrying brass ankhs and elaborate Egyptian headdresses. So that gets twisted too. And I hate trying to nitpick these things, but so I agree. But a lot of time it is not revolutionary to try to replicate your ancestors. We have to build on what our ancestors did, not to replicate it. So you got people that define everything that's good or bad or right or wrong according to what Africans did in the past. I tell people I'm a vegan, and they were like, can you tell me of an African society that was vegan? And I'll say, well, no, not that I know of. So what? You know, we can't say, well, we know what African can be vegan because there were no African vegans 1500 or 50 or 60 years ago. So it is not our job to replicate. We can build upon, improve upon, and advance what our ancestors did. We're not just obligated to replicate what they did. Zamaya, did you take a break from YouTube? No, I didn't. Well, I did, but not. I was traveling, and I had actually taken my little setup to broadcast from the hotel room. But when I touched ground, I had forgotten some instruments, and I've forgotten some stuff I needed, and I was running around. I had said earlier, I was really good at traveling, getting my shit together, putting my shit together, and holding my shit together as I come and go. But you know, I hadn't traveled in over a year, hadn't been out of town in over a year, barely been out of the house except to get groceries in almost a year from the quarantine. So when I had some travel obligations, I just kind of fell apart. So I'm getting back. I didn't even know how to pack. So I was well accustomed to traveling. But, you know, I found out, I didn't know that I forgot how to get my shit together. But so anyway, long story short, no, I did not take a break from YouTube, but I wasn't broadcasting because I was traveling. And I do have a get up and a setup. And besides, the hotel Wi-Fi wasn't really that good anyway. So it probably wouldn't have worked. But I had intended, I have a setup. So if I travel in the future, I'm going to get a hotspot so that I don't have to miss broadcasts. Because I hate missing out. The people support me through Patreon and CashApp and stuff. So I am obligated to my supporters to continue to this work of being a Pan-African propagandist, as I'd like to identify myself as. So I won't be taking, if at all possible, I don't intend to make these breaks like the last couple of weeks at all regular. And shout out to Q4 Radio and the staff there for being patient with me. I'm not even sure because I told them, but anyway, I guess that's it. I'm just tired of hearing my excuses. Phil, it's been my experience that older Black people have a lot of atheist views, while aunties and uncles telling their children not to listen to them. Really? Well, you know, my grandmother, she was in her 90s when she passed, and she was very religious. And as she got older, she got into her mid to late 80s, she just stopped fucking with church. She would listen to gospel music, but I think that's just for entertainment purposes. And she was more interested in reading a James Patterson spy novel than reading the Bible. So yeah, I think that's the case. I think when our ancestors, when they really get ready to move on, I mean, they put away childish things, you know. So I'm glad that my grandmother didn't, you know, waste all her life going to church and paying tithes and all that shit. She wasted enough of that. So, she had an extremely religious funeral ceremony, but again, I think that was more for my surviving relatives than for her. She even said as much. Okay, Andy. Good evening, Diallo. Do you think that the left's criticism of Garvey hanging with white supremacists is legit? And do you know any Carlos Cook's books? The first is I have to know what they specifically say. I think that Garvey made some mistakes. Garvey was a capitalist. Garvey was a Christian. Garvey was organizing Black folks a century ago. So I think if those criticisms are constructive criticisms in terms of we should improve on what Garvey did, we should build on what Garvey did, we should advance and refine what Garvey did, as opposed to denouncing Garvey or saying Garvey is not worthy of our veneration and not worthy of our reflection and not worthy to have his legacy carried forward by us. So it depends on the criticism. I don't know which criticism that comes from, because I tell people I'm anti-capitalist. I'm a socialist. I'm anti-Christian. I'm an atheist. And people say, oh, but you're a Garveyite. So how can you claim to support Garvey and follow Garvey and read Garvey and venerate Garvey, and you have the red, black, and green, but you don't do exactly what Garvey did exactly the way he did it, you know? So I think that the criticism that says, well, Garvey made a mistake. Garvey thought that if he could demonstrate to our oppressors, to white people, that Black people had the capacity to build organizations, to build up institutions to sustain ourselves economically, to engage in international trade, to build up a military and nurses. He thought if we could demonstrate to white people, and he said this in speeches and he wrote it in books, that if we can demonstrate to them that we had men of big affairs, then we would no longer be subjugated to white people, but we would be partners with them, that we could work with them, that he was under the misconception that white oppression of black people is because white people did not understand or did not accept or did not respect our ability to act as partners or as our own independent power structure. So he said, I'm going to create a military. I'm going to create an international shipping company. I'm going to make international trade deals. I'm going to establish an African empire. And and then the Africans' seat of power will go and sit with the European seat of power, the Asian seat of power, and the Arab seat of power, and then we will have our seat of power, and we will conduct ourselves as sovereign people as they conduct themselves. He was sadly mistaken. He didn't know that the white man already understood our capacity to do that, and he didn't give a fuck. So that was a severe misstep that Garvey made. And that was his impotence. He said that these white supremacists are the cultural, political, economic leaders of the white masses. And because I am the leader, that I am a black nationalist, I am a Pan-Africanist, I will go and sit and negotiate. He didn't say, I want to join you, I want to partner with you, I want to be friends with you. He said to them, I'm going to negotiate. We can't have you lynching and murdering our people. We can't have you harassing our people. We can't have you attacking our infrastructure, our farms. So we're going to sit and say, hey, we are people. I'm a man, you a man. Let's sit and negotiate. Which enemies negotiate? I mean, right now, the U.S. Diplomats are talking to the Taliban right now. Donald Trump went and talked to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. So you are a fool to criticize a black leader for being willing to or seeking to negotiate or speak with our leaders. Now, you can criticize what was said or what was negotiated or what terms they reached with the enemy, but you're a fool to denounce someone for engaging with the enemy, number one. So it depends on if you're criticizing Garvey for the purposes of refining, improving, and building on Garvey's legacy, then I wholeheartedly accept it. I do the same. But if you're denouncing Garvey because he went and spoke to some crackers, then you're an idiot. And not you personally, but someone who would say that. And I don't think you can be a true leftist. You might be a liberal. You might be a reactionary, but a true revolutionary wouldn't denounce Garvey. But yes, so it depends on where that criticism is coming from and what are the conclusions of that criticism. Garvey is not above criticism, and I don't think that it is a crime or someone automatically gets denounced for being willing to speak. Because you said hanging with. I don't think he ever hung with white supremacists. I don't think he ever socialized or broke bread with white supremacists. I think he went there in his regalia and his military garb with his coat of arms and with his African Legion to negotiate terms and see, well, we're stuck here in this land. I plan on going back to Africa, but while we're here, we're going to have to be able to maneuver in this land, and we can't have y'all motherfuckers in our faces fucking lynching, raping, and fucking with us. So, let's sit down and hash this out. Or, let's try to do it at the table instead of doing it in the streets. And I respect that of Garvey. The only book, and as far as Carlos Cooks, the only books I know is Carlos Cooks and Black Nationalism. That's the only book I have. So, and it's a wonderful book. It's not even a book. It's more of a pamphlet. But Carlos Cooks is one of my favorite historical African leaders who took over the helm of the UNIA after Garvey was framed and ousted. This is the book right here. Let me just take that off. Carlos Cooks, compiled and edited by Robert Harris and Nyota Harris and Grand Sasa Harris. So the Harris family, shout out to them. Cooks and Black Nationalism from Garvey to Malcolm. This book actually talks about not just Carlos's life. It's a biography and an ideological tome. It talks about his ideas. It talks about his methodology. It talks about his struggles in the UNIA because Garvey's followers who remained in the States didn't want Cooks to have a leadership position because he was a professed atheist. And they didn't want an atheist leading a group. And so Garvey wrote Cooks a letter and said, keep doing what you're doing. You know, this is not a religious organization. It's a secular organization. So if they got a problem with if they got a problem with the atheist leading the group, then they got to go, not you. So but it also talks about how he was, if you read the book, it says, it basically suggests that he might have been poisoned or assassinated by the state. Remember, J. Edgar Hoover was around subverting black leaders way back then. And he had gotten sick, he had thrown up, and he was taken to the hospital. It's very tragic. So it's a biography and an ideological manifesto at the same time. So, but this is the only books I know of. I have a copy of this book. I think everyone should have a copy of this book. And I think that Brother Carlos Cooks should have a more prominent position in the Black liberation struggle in terms of knowing what he stood for and who he is and teaching his legacy to down through the generations. Arthur, the prodigal son has returned. Yes, I have. Yeah. Yes, I really want to see people pass, but definitely. Okay. Please tell me if I mispronounce your name. But Ziyama, anybody, you know, if you can give me the phonetic pronunciation. I don't mean to butcher y'all names, but I went to public school, so it's the best I can do. What's your take on Scheherazade Ali? I notice many so-called pro-blacks who misogynistic and homophobic love using her quotes to shut black women up. Some people call her the grandmother of pygmies. My thoughts on Scheherazade Ali is that she is a Islamic reactionary. Much of what she teaches and talks about black women is born out of her Islamic beliefs, not out of research, not out of real analysis of data, not out of any type of engagement or inquiry. It's born purely out of her Islamic belief system and her Islamic indoctrination. And I will quote Dr. John Henry Clarke. One of the most accurate things he's always said about Islam is that the Arab has always been a woman hater. Islam, like all the Abrahamic religions, or as Dr. Clarke called them, the male chauvinist murder cults, they hate women. The women are the mothers of death. They brought death to the world. Women brought sin to the world. Women caused man to fall from grace and to be detached from God. Women's bodily function, her menstrual cycle and her is unclean, and her birth pains are an eternal curse from God. If you read what the Quran, the Bible, the Torah has to say about women, is that it hates women. And the only way for women to redeem themselves in the name of Yahweh, Jesus, Allah, Jehovah, the only way for a woman to redeem herself and to demonstrate herself worthy of God's grace is to find a man to subjugate herself to, whether that man be her father or that man be the man that her father gives her away to, her husband. So the woman's role in the Abrahamic religion is submission and service, breeding stock, and to be and pleasure of man. That's it. So you take a woman who's deeply seated in these ideas and concepts, and she looks at modern women, of course she would be hostile. And she teaches in the what's the book? The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman, that it is that Black women who are culturally aware, Black women who are African and African-centered, Black women who wear natural hair, dreadlocks, afros, shaved heads, Black women who wear traditional or African garb are filthy. She says that their homes are filthy, that their bodies are unclean, simply by the nature of them trying to embrace and reflect their African heritage. So if you read Scheherazade Ali, you will find the Islamic point of view, not just of Black women, but of Afrocentricity, African-centeredness. And Scheherazade Ali has found it very profitable. But one thing, if you could say, is a redeeming quality of her is that she's an equal opportunity, irrational person. She has attacked men to a much lesser extent. She loves us brothers, but also she wrote a book years ago, How to Tell If Your Man Is on the Down Low. And she would suggest that women do things like during intercourse, stick one finger in the anus of the man. And if the man is into that, then that means he's on the down low. I mean, it's just utter madness. So I have read Scheherazade Ali. I moved to New York in the early 90s, and she was very popular. I've been to some of her public talks. But if you're going to hate on Scheherazade Ali, she is doing nothing more than accurately. She may be wrong about what she's saying about Black women, but she's right in her reflection and articulating the ideas and points of views. There are some like Iranian and Islamic fundamentalists on YouTube. You go and look at some of the English speaking, they're out of Switzerland and the UK. I might just do some response or play some of this. But women in true Islam. But here's also the contradiction. If she was truly a good Muslim woman, she wouldn't be writing books and doing lectures or instructing men on doing anything. So at the very time she's reflecting the Islamic point of view on the woman, she's also violating the Muslim or Islamic instructions for women, because women are not to take teaching roles, especially not teaching roles of men. And if you've ever been to a Scheherazade Ali lecture, I went to a couple in Brooklyn and one in Harlem, you will find that it's mostly men there. So, she's a walking contradiction. She is, I don't know if this is a thing, but if this is a thing, she's a gender traitor. She's a sellout. I don't like the term pick me, because on social media, and I've seen that Lauryn Hill and Scheherazade Ali, a lot of younger sisters are going back through the annals, through the culture, and identifying these toxic gender traitors, and things. And even one time I was at a presentation and a sister got up and says, you encourage men when a woman gets too out of hand, when a woman talks back, or a woman is not significantly or sufficiently obedient to you, does a man have a right to beat his woman or to strike? And she's like, I never said that a man should beat a woman. I said that a man should strike a woman. And she even demonstrated the appropriate way, open hand, so you can strike her with open hand, but you can't punch her with a closed fist. Some weird shit. And so the woman flipped it on Sister Scheherazade and said that, so have you ever been slapped? And Scheherazade responded, no, because I've never behaved or conducted myself in a manner that made me worthy to be beaten by the man. So she claimed that she was always sufficiently submissive, docile, feminine, and Islamic enough to never provoke the wrath of her man. Now, her man was there. Was he on the stage? Yeah, I think he was sitting on one of the chairs on the stage. Her man was there. He didn't confirm or deny, so that's what I would do too. So the brother wrote that out. He didn't jump up and say, yeah, that's right, or no, it's wrong. But, she's a fucking weirdo. I think it's unfortunate that these characters who aren't scholars, who aren't revolutionaries, and who don't even have anything constructive to say to the community are lifted up on their shoulders and carried around. So yeah. But let me talk about pygmy. I don't like the term pygmy because the way it's applied. Now, I've gotten into debates about what is the definition of a pygmy. And what I've been told the definition of a pygmy is a woman who betrays other women. And examples I was given of a pygmy was a woman who does things like set up other women to be raped. So you have a woman that says, hey, come to this party, and invites a friend or a woman who trusts her to a party, and there's men waiting and hiding in ambush, and she sets the woman up to be ambushed and raped. And that's the thing a pygmy does. But what I've seen in terms of application is almost any woman who has a divergent opinion from any other woman about men, about relationships, about intimacy gets called a pick me. So a pick me is anyone who disagrees with another woman about the issues related to intimacy and relationships with another woman. So I've seen this term pick me flung about recklessly and looselessly. So I've never been able to lock down a true definition of a pick me. I've heard extreme examples of a pick me where I've seen women who've done horrendous things to betray and harm other women, women who daughters are preyed upon by their boyfriends and they throw the daughters out. That's a pick me. But a pick me is a woman who expressed the fact that she wants to make herself attractive to the opposite sex, or more alluring, or wants to give her man a plate before she eats. Then she's a pick me. Like, pick me is all over the place. So if you can lock down a coherent and consistent, and I don't mean to blame the people. Maybe there is a coherent and consistent definition for pick me. Maybe there is. I haven't seen it. It's a relatively new term. And when new terms are put out there, a lot of times they get bounced around until they settle into a groove. Words don't really have meanings, especially in the internet age. Words have usage, not so much meanings. Definitions are pretty much loose nowadays. But if I could get a coherent definition of a pick me, then maybe I'm more likely to say, yeah, she is, or no, she ain't. But I mean, from what I've heard, she would fit the definition, but I just don't like using those terms because they're just so volatile. Thoughts on the current Palestinians genocide? And Joshua asked, and then with a follow-up, and would you classify it as a genocide? What's happening in Palestine is absolute genocide. Now, I was just talking about this earlier. Genocide first became, even though we go back in history and talk about genocide, the genocide of the Native Americans, and the genocide of the Ma'afa, and things, but really the root of the word genocide is based in genes. It's based in genes, right? But the double helix wasn't even, and genes weren't even really understood until like the 1950s. So all that stuff, the term genocide came when we had more of a grasp of genetic heritage and genetic relationships to phenotype and manifest or visible features of humans. But I don't know how relevant that is. Let me just answer the damn question. My thoughts on the Palestinian genocide is that it should be opposed, that it is absolutely a genocide. Israel, the Zionist state, its leaders, its military, its security agencies are engaged in genocide. The United States is also engaged in genocide in Palestine, in the Palestinian territories, the occupied territories, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, and the entire nation of Palestine that has now been occupied and taken over by the Zionists, Israel. It is a genocide. The United States is fully culpable in the genocide because the United States not only gives Israel the monetary resources, but they also give Israel the weapons. And even more important than the weapons, the U.S., being a permanent member of the UN Security Council, defends Israel from any type of sanctions from the UN. So they veto anytime the UN Security Council or the UN General Assembly attempts to hold Israel accountable for its many war crimes and human rights violations. The United States 100% stands up and defends Israel. So this is not an Israeli genocide. This is a U.S. Israeli genocide. The U.S. is fully culpable. Every dead Palestinian is as much the fault of the United States. And when you talk about the nations, you very often are not talking about the people and the citizens. I know some brothers and sisters that live in Israel that ain't got shit to do with what the Israeli state, the Mossad, and the government's doing over there. But anyway, yes, it is a genocide. I think it has to be opposed. It really frustrates me. A lot of times you have black people, black nationalists to say, I don't care what's happening to those people over there. And even if you are so inhumane to say you don't care about a genocide because the people aren't of your race or your heritage, you have to know that the West Bank and the Gaza Strip are laboratories. They don't just murder those people wholesale. They don't just occupy their land and slowly take away their land. They also, but I want to pull this up. I'm going to see if I can magnify this. Because the white man defined what genocide is. And I guess who better to define what genocide is other than white folks? You know, they're the experts of it. But many of the technologies, surveillance technologies, lethal urban warfare tactics, and tactics and tech for surveillance, repression, urban suppression tactics were developed in Israel. The cop that killed Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot, went to Israel to train. If you type in Google U.S. cops train, it'll complete in Israel. So let me just share a screen. Let me go to the full screen. And you can see here where it says, where do many cops, police departments, or where do many police departments train? This is just the first article. I'm just pulling this up. Y'all seeing it with me. With whom are many U.S. police departments training? With a chronic human rights violator, Israel. Many U.S. go to Israel to train in how to suppress us in the black ghettos. Much of the technology and tactics that the police use against us in the ghetto, in the black urban core, they developed those tactics in Israel. So, you know, that's just the first article. That's an article from 2016. Here's another article. And just put in U.S. cops train in Israel. You'll get literally thousands of articles. The San Diego Tribune, it's time to end United States police training in Israel. Many of these cops that are murdering our people in the streets, they either have gone personally to Israel, or they have been trained by officers who've been trained in Israel, or they even bring Israeli contractors here to train the police in chokeholds, Krav Maga, and how to use a baton, how to surround a housing project or a housing unit in the urban core, how to map out a grid and contain people. So even if you are so inhumane to say, oh, that's them over there, they ain't got nothing to do with me. If you are an intelligent and humane person, you will oppose the Zionist occupation and the Zionist campaign of genocide against the people of Palestine and abroad, because you also notice that the number one sister state, the Israel, the Zionists in Israel also were the main funders and equippers who gave weapons to the minority government in South Africa. Israel refused to join the South African apartheid boycott and continued to send weapons and support and aid to the white Afrikaners in South Africa. The same thing, if you look at most of the African dictators, the African warlords on the African continent, one of the chief allies of getting weapons and material support to those individuals is Israel. A lot of times the U.S. doesn't want to get its hands dirty. So the resources and the money and the weapons that go to Israel are funneled out to extremist and corrupt officials on the African continent, the Caribbean. Anyway, let's go to genocide. This is what white folks told us genocide was. And it took them after they had about 4 centuries of engaging in genocide before they defined what it was. Genocide does not mean extermination. You can commit an act of genocide without wiping out the population. Genocide means if you are killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, such as not giving you enough money to raise. I ain't got enough money. High earning man. Can't get a job. Don't have no kids. I won't date a man that got a lower than 750. Who creates those conditions that we now think make us unworthy to have sex, let alone have children? And finally, forcibly transferring the children of the group to another group. Not only is Israel engaged in all of these behaviors and tactics against the Palestinian, the United States government is engaged in all of these state-sanctioned behaviors in the United States. You go to any state, except for like Wyoming and North Dakota, any state, you'll find that the Child Protective Services has a glut of black children. They're so quick to snatch black children from the home and give them to white parents. My wife and I went and took the foster parent class in Kansas City, Missouri. The vast, like 87% of the children were black, and 90% of the people there to take in these foster kids and make money off these kids' backs were white people. So this happened in Australia. This happened in Canada. This is happening right now in the United States, and it's happening. And so, yes, it is a genocide, not even according to my definition. And genocide can be done in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So yes, it is a genocide, not by my definition, not by crazy militant BroDiallo's definition, but this is the Convention on the Prevention of Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, approved and proposed for signature, ratification, or ascension by the General Assembly Resolution 260A3 on on 9th of December 1948. You know what that was? That was during the resolution of World War II. This law was literally written on behalf of the Holocaust. So the very people that this law was written in honor of are engaged in it freely. And that's one thing we got to learn about white folks. A lot of times we come under the impression that if a white folks been through something, they somehow are natural allies of us. Well, the Jews have been through genocide and discrimination, religious persecution, so they can understand racism. Or gay white folks have been under persecution and discrimination and housing discrimination and jobs, so they can relate. Or white women have suffered patriarchy and you know, Salem witch trials, so white women can relate. We always find the members of our oppressive groups, segments of the oppressive group, that we think we can identify with. But every single time the Irish came here and they said no, and the white Catholics and the Italians and the Irish, they came here and were called white niggers. But what we find is that no matter what persecution a group, an isolated group within the white community goes through, soon as they get their white card, they flip on us. They turn on us like rabid dogs. So, you know, y'all busy trying to determine who to invite to the cookout and all that shit. First of all, let's fuck the cookout. Let's have strategic meetings. But beyond that, there are no such thing as permanent allies. There are only permanent interests. I'll leave it at that. Okay. Ben, Scheherazade Ali is definitely a social reactionary. Good brother. And here's the thing about a lot of this. A lot of times when black women are under attack, brothers, we need to speak up. We can't just be like, well, they ain't talking about us. We need to speak up against this and let the sisters know, but more so than letting sisters know, letting other brothers know this shit is not cool. You know, because I see a lot of brothers. I've been in the circles. I've been at the basketball court. I've been at the barbershop. And brothers will sit there and rant all day about the system and what we go through. And then some dude will be like, yeah, my bitch this, my bitch that. And nobody says it. So justice is not blind. White folks' justice is blind. We need to see and expose that shit. So it's good that brothers are calling out Scheherazade Ali, because her fan base and all these other weirdo ass massage noir motherfuckers. That one dude with the sharp haircut and the person, I don't know, Kevin Samuels, and when he gets to talking, and when Dr. Umar gets to talking at Alpha Male and blaming Singleback to Tariq Nasheed, Tony Sotomayor, brothers, these brothers shouldn't be comfortable amongst other black men. Anybody that disparages or has made a career on disparaging black women shouldn't be comfortable in spaces that are dominated by black men. You know, every brother, before he comes into a space full of black men, needs to check himself like, damn, you know, have I dissed the sisters lately? You know, because I can't be around brothers if I ain't right with the sisters. Shoot, we talking about allies, white allies. I mean, we need to be allies of our sisters, and sisters need to be our allies. You know, hold it down. Wangisi hating on Sister Ali. What happened to sisterhood? Okay, here we go. Shamaya. Thank you, Shamaya. Was she in the NOI? I don't know if she was in the NOI. She loves Farrakhan. She said, I love Minister Farrakhan. But then again, if she was truly nation, if she was MGT, she wouldn't be a prominent. I think the only reason she's not in the Nation of Islam, because the Nation of Islam keep their women in check like Allah wants them to do. So you'll notice, you got Minister Malcolm, Minister Khalid Muhammad, you got all these prominent, what's that other Tony Muhammad guy? You got all these prominent male ministers coming out of the nation. There are no prominent women speakers or female public figures coming out of the nation. And when you do see a woman from the nation given permission to speak, number one, she's in this weird uniform, like a penguin, and she's only can speak to women. So if you go and look at any women speaking for the Nation of Islam, they're talking about one of two things. One, they're either giving instruction to women, because women are not allowed to give instruction to men, or two, they are praising generally Farrakhan or praising the men in general. That's the only thing women, you won't find MGT or real Muslim women, NOI women, talking about politics, talking about what we need to do as a people, or expressing her own intellect or expressing her own thought. And they got the MGT, which is the female version of the Fruit of Islam, which is the male military force, but it's called Muslim Girl Training. And you got some 40, 50-year-old women dressed up like, religious nuns. They really look like nuns. They look like nuns in sailor caps. But, everything in the Nation of Islam is take a little bit from the Baptists, a little bit from the Catholics, a little bit from Islam. It's a hodgepodge cult. But no, she's not in the NOI. And I think the only reason she's not an NOI person, because if she was truly an MGT or a true member of the NOI, she wouldn't be allowed to go out giving public talks about what she thinks about society, the world, and definitely wouldn't be able to instruct men on how they should or shouldn't behave. At best, she could have these thoughts and share them with her man and have her man go speak on behalf of her. Even Malcolm X was on that bullshit. You had Betty Shabazz, Dr. Betty Shabazz. She's more educated than Malcolm was. And I'm sure she had her own thoughts, but we didn't get to hear what Betty Shabazz thought, beyond saying, I love my husband, I support my husband, listen to my husband. So I don't even support that. People always say, oh, would you have followed Malcolm? I wouldn't have followed Malcolm as a cult leader. I would follow Malcolm as a political leader, because remember, Malcolm left the cult and became a secular leader and said, leave your religion at home. That's the Malcolm I would follow. I would not follow Malcolm at Mosque number 7. I would follow Malcolm at the OAU, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Let's just clear all that up. Beyond that, so no, she's not NOI, and that's why I suspect she isn't. Ben is back. Diallo, when are you going to get your Buck Breaking DVD review? I'll review Buck Breaking if I can see it for free. I ain't about to give that motherfucker 1 red cent. But I will review it if I can view it for free. He got a real big thing about bootlegging. He go around to black folks and flipping over tables and cursing people out and attacking black people for bootlegging his shit. Punk ass motherfucker. Him, the irritated genie, Ansar Quasi, literally attacking elderly black men who are hustling DVD. Everybody know the goddamn DVD man back in the day, the tapes man, will come around and get your shit out. I did some lectures for Sonnet, or no, I didn't even do it for Sonnet. I did a lecture at Professor Mackey's study group on liberation, tangible and obtainable. And it was a popular tape back then, in the early 2000s, and Sonnetter got a hold of it and he was hustling. Of course, that was par for the course. If you were a public speaker and giving public talks, your shit was going to hit the streets. But they were the only group. Nobody had their shit. So you had Dr. Clark's tapes, Amos Wilson tapes. In fact, when Dale Jones would come around and see people selling his tapes of his music, his lectures, his discussions, he'd look at their table and be like, you don't have this, you don't have that, and go in his bag and give them whatever titles they were missing. Or, hey, here's my latest lecture. He would encourage that. To say, you getting disseminating vital information to the people, and I encourage that. And if you can give me something, I'll appreciate it. But if you're going to take that money and feed your family, that's how we do. That's communalism. That's socialism. We ain't doing that copyright intellectual property bullshit. But a motherfucker will make an anti-capitalist lecture and then attack a motherfucker for copying it and distributing it without paying royalties. These weird motherfuckers. So beyond to say all that, you laughing, I'm laughing too. I'll look at that buck breaking shit if I could get a bootleg copy of it. So somebody go ahead, throw that shit up on Venmo or some shit and send me the link. Fuck Tariq Nasheed. And fuck him for when he said black women had it easier in slavery because they could give up some pussy and get what they want, where black men didn't have that option. Man, listen. And y'all let this dude travel the nation amongst African people and talk and have status in our community, man. What the fuck? Some weird shit. Ikanim. Or I just call you Obama. Pick me is a woman who throws women under the bus in favor of men. So if she throws women under the bus like Kamala Harris in favor of the state, is it just men? Is it just black men or any man? What about women who throw other women in the bus? You know, prosecutors, female prosecutors, you know, there's a woman who's reached the general status in the U.S. Marines who will be coordinating attacks on African people in the Horn of Africa. A black woman who will be coordinating the infiltration of Africa, deeper penetration of the U.S. military through AFRICOM. Is she a pick-me for the U.S. military? And I say, you know, I could, and throwing under the bus is somewhat subjective. Is simply holding an opinion, throwing someone under the bus. There's a lot of people who have opinion that are counter to mine, but I don't think just because they think something or have a position different than mine, I don't think they're betraying me or throwing me under the bus. We simply disagree. So if a woman gets online and say, well, hell, I think that it's a woman's duty or my duty to cook for my man or some shit like that. Is that throwing you under the bus? That's between her and her man. Like, you know, if you got some weird fetish, but if a woman says any woman that doesn't cook for her man every night ain't worthy of having a man and she's dirty, and then I say, okay, yeah, that's weird. Like I said, that's still, I mean, that's a good attempt. Because if we could run with that, then fine. But then that's going to open up a whole new debate. But like, you know, y'all looking at me like, yeah, you complaining about debates. Yeah, no, I could debate. Thought a pick me was a woman who disparages other women in order to appeal to the male validation for herself. That's another thing, you know. But then y'all, I see y'all doing, if it's up, then it's up, and it's up, and it's stuck. I see y'all doing these challenges to these women are like, you know, ain't nobody cat wetter than mine, ain't nobody back fatter than mine. You know, is that disparaging? Like I got the, you know, WAP. I got the best WAP, you know. I don't cook, I don't clean, but I still got the ring and you don't, or bow down, bitches. Well, you know, that Beyonce song where she was dressed up like a colonizer. You know, is that putting women down? I don't know. I'm asking questions. Y'all can ask me questions, then I can ask y'all questions. You know, here's that thing where she dressed up just like Queen Victoria, like a fucking colonizer. And I don't mind black folks playing dress up. I don't mind black folks playing dress up. But what you do while you're dressed up like that is relevant. So if you're going to tell black women to bow down, bitches, and then you dress up like a European colonizer in the colonial garb and with the colonial guard telling black women to bow down, like, is this pick me behavior? I don't know. And I know she has a lot of female fans. And are all the women who like this and dance to this song, are they also engaging in pick me? I'm asking sincerely. I've talked to women about pick me's and disparage other women, you know. And I know that happens against men too. You know, there's whole songs, cut that zero and get with this hero. That's a PG way to say dudes be like, yeah, hey, that dude ain't shit. You know, you need to get with me. I mean, that's been something that's been going on. Like, you know, I'm the man. Rest of these dudes can't hang with me. They not as fly as me. They don't have a car like mine. They don't have money like me. You need to get with me. Fuck all these other dudes. Or you need to get with me and F all these other women. Now, again, if two women are going after the same men, or if a dozen women are after the same man, then that's one thing. But if a woman comes on and say, yeah, black women are destroying the black family, and men are like, yeah, you're one of the good ones. You're willing to tell the truth about these black women. Yeah, that I can see that. But if it's just like, hey, why are you trying to get over there? You need to come over here. Then that's, it's interesting. I don't know. I don't like talking about emotions. I'm an alpha male. I don't have emotions. Fuck the cookout. Yes. James, what's up, man? That's my number one brother, man. Soul brother number one. Yes, we do. Yes, we do what? Okay, Wangisi. Diallo, what do you think is going to be the outcome from people refusing to go back to work because unemployment pays better than many so-called menial jobs? I think the outcome is they're going to fucking cut the benefits. That's what they're going to do. The people will be sent back to work. This is only a temporary holdover. Eventually, they're going to cut the benefits. There will be some benefits because already some jobs, like Chipotle, has already announced that it's going to be giving higher wages and more benefits, and it's going to have commit to fixed work schedules, because they used to do you wouldn't know from week to week what your schedule will be. So I think there will be a compromise whenever the workers get some leverage, whether it's through labor organizing and unionization, or there's a deficit of workers for jobs. The employers, the owners of the means of production, will make some small concessions. The government will cooperate with the corporations by slowly reducing the benefits or eliminating the benefits. The workers will return, enjoy these concessions, but because the workers aren't radicalized, and because the workers are content with reforms instead of seizing the means of production, they will give concessions and enticements to and encouragements. It'll be a carrot and stick. Reduce benefits, give more concessions from the corporations and the employers until the workers are back, and then they'll slowly start to erode them. That's what happened in the 50s with the labor movement, the progressive movement. So I think that until we have a true workers' revolution as opposed to job place reform, we're just going to play this pity patter game, And even if the companies have this lull where they can't get workers, the government will come in and they're too big to fail. So that's what I think. So that, eventually they're going to work their way back to subordinate workers and gluttonous parasitic capitalists sucking our lifeblood and exploiting our labor. Is going to get back to that eventually, using a carrot and stick approach. Missouri and other states have already decided to cut unemployment benefits in June to force workers' hands. Yep, okay. You answered your own question. You need to get on here and run this thing. Yes. Phil. Shemaya. Both the AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson has small percentage of causing blood clot. Will that stop you from taking the vaccine? That wouldn't stop me. Number one, the blood clots have two pre-existing conditions. Generally, it happens to middle-aged women, number one. Number two, from what I've read, the women who have had severe blood clots that required hospitalization and the couple that caused death had pre-existing blood-borne conditions like anemia and other clotting issues before taking the vaccine. And finally, contraception, birth control causes higher rates of blood clots and higher rates of death than the vaccines. So that would not, the blood clot issue, I think, is less so about a public safety issue and more about marketing. You mentioned three huge multinational corporations that have basically aligned themselves with the government. The United States has aligned itself with Pfizer. Johnson & Johnson has received also government support and funding. So you have both private interest and public interest heavily invested. So what the corporate media is going to do is use whatever leverage they can to try to push one and raise one company above the other. So I don't even think this is truly a public health issue. Then it is a marketing campaign and a marketing strategy for market share. But no, it wouldn't. The risks are much lower. The risk of taking birth control is higher than blood clots. Blood clots from birth control is higher. So no, that would not be an issue for me unless I had some if I was a middle-aged woman, premenopausal middle-aged woman, if I had some existing bloodborne illness, then I would consult with my physician. I wouldn't just show up at the center and get the vaccine. But if you don't have those things, then it's extremely unlikely, like literally 1 in 5 million chance that you will get. And you're more likely to die in a car accident on your way to get the vaccine than you are to die of the vaccine. Glad I erased that contradiction. Thank you. Glad I did too. I know. Oh, Sage. Let's see if she's being nice. Tariq Nasheed has failed. The failed pimp is a sociopath. That motherfucker been blocked me. Okay, I'm going to have to set my notifications. Yes. Tariq Nasheed. I don't think he's a failed pimp. He was pimping hoes by his own admission. And then he decided pimping black people's desire to be, because remember, before he was Afrocentric, and he had those hidden colors because he has a background in media. He actually did this really funny thing, pimping Congress with Michael Moore. And I thought this was funny in the Michael Moore documentary with Tariq Nasheed appeared in that to be congressional pimp, and so he has he was really actually an entertainer. He's a failed entertainer. He was never really a real pimp. He was a failed entertainer who developed this pimp persona because that's what in the 90s what was popular in Hollywood. But let's just take a little of this. I mean, I thought this was clever. I'm actually, I kind of like Michael Moore, so maybe I'm biased. But stop me if you've seen this.
Congressman Bill Thomas gives corporations political favors.
Let's kind of skip ahead. He's talking about the congressmen being whores for corporations.
Keeping an eye on her. And a politician doesn't. Until now.
Anybody can say there's a pimp. I go to a club, and a lot of young guys, I'm a pimp, I'm a pimp, I'm a pimp. But you can tell them the attitude. I even wrote a book on the game, man. I got a book. I'm one of the 5 pimps in history to actually have a book about the game. That's why I'm so well known around the country, besides my impeccable pimping skills.
So do you think the way I'm looking at this is off, or do you think it's on? I mean, because I look at Congress, I see them selling themselves out. We've tried so many things to get some order. Yeah, well, it's all failed. So you're like the last resort, all right?
Yeah.
If you can go down there as our pimp and bring some order to this house of ill repute, I think America would applaud you.
Will America applaud a pimp?
I'm not sure if you do that. Yes. If you do this, if you slap them around a bit and get them, knock some sense into their head, and at the very least, if they're going to be whores for the people.
Okay. Well, I will pimp for America. How about that?
All right. So that was a persona. He was never truly a pimp. He was pimping for America. He was a character. So he's a failed actor, really. And he's been acting. So he decided to do real, live action role play. He's a LARPer. So he got into this black shit and he was all African. When him and Dr. Umar were allies making those shitty ass Hidden Figures tapes. And then he went from being Afrocentric to being ADOS and anti-African. So he continues to reinvent himself. So he's failed at pretending to be a pimp. He failed at acting, but he took his background in video production, editing, and went from making goofy ass videos, pimping for America and fucking around with Michael Moore, and started making Afrocentric, trying to appeal to black folks' damaged egos. So yeah, he's a character. It says less about him. Everything you said about him is correct, Sage. He's a sociopath. He's demonstrated sociopathic tendencies. And that's why it's so easy for him to jump from one ideology to the next. You don't really see some people evolve in their ideology. Other people jump and switch ideology and advocate for one thing, and years later they're advocating for the opposite thing. But I think it says more about the black community and how vulnerable we are to charlatans and hustlers than it says about him. So we got to chickadee check ourselves, you know, and try to inform and empower our community so that we are less vulnerable to these fucking hustlers. A different opinion isn't betrayal. Right on. You put simp. Oh, wait. I think I skipped. Oh, right. I'm not going to go off just because you said I will go off. I don't want to be predictable. I don't like the term simp because I know for a fact that simp is any black man that values a woman beyond his ability to get either pleasure or resources from her. So you express affection, care, the desire to nurture, defend, to protect a black woman, you're going to be called a simp. So I think simp is a form of massage noir, because people who denounce or attack simps are basically saying that black women are not worthy to be pursued, to be desired, to be catered to, and things of that nature. So I'm not going off, not cursing. I'm glad I skipped ahead because Andy said I was going to go off, and now I get to be less predictable because I was able to look into the future. So I don't like the term simp. I don't use the term simp. And I think that men who use the term simp are not so much trying to attack men, more so than demonstrate their own devaluation of black women. I said that in a very, very appropriate way. Sage, a pick-me is the equivalent of a Sambo. A pick-me will pit herself against another woman for the validation of male acceptance. That happens, you know, we are primates. People are primates. We've been competing for each other's affections since before we developed language and culture. She places herself as a submissive, subservient person willing to appease a man or her man without fail, without question. She is fucked up in the head. I know. Can y'all see that cursor? Let me move that. Or is that just me? Sorry if you could see that. I don't really have a problem. I'm not in a dom submissive relationship, but some people get off on that. Some people take it to the extreme and tie each other up and step on each other's genitals. Some people take it to a domestic level. Some people really get off on that man bringing home the bacon and the woman greeting him at the door with an apron and fresh bread in the oven. I don't condemn people who get into that shit. Those what they call trad wives or traditional roles. And that's European tradition. That was never an African tradition, but that's a whole nother discussion. But a woman being subservient in her relationship with her male partner is not a betrayal of you. That is really, I hate to be crass, it's none of our business. You know, if you want to tie your woman up, if you want to dress up like a piggy and she dress or like a sheep and she dress up like little Bo Peep and spanks you, that's your business in the bedroom. So that side of it, I don't understand why that would upset. That'd be like somebody being upset with me, like, oh, your wife, my wife has a higher education. She has a PhD, you know, and you let your wife get out ahead of you, or she's publishing in journals. She's doing shit I'm not even qualified to do. And people going to be mad at our relationship. Oh, you let your woman get out ahead of you or some shit like that. You know, I'm just like, I'm not a nerd like that. I'm not about to sit and bury myself in no documents and journals like that. She wanted to do it. I'm like, I'll support you in doing it. But what the fuck that got to do with somebody else's? And if another man says my woman will stay home, there are women who want to stay home. Find you one. I think it's wrong to find a woman who wants to go out into the world and have a career or assert herself, or a woman that doesn't want to have a litter. She maybe want 1 or 2 kids, but not 15. And you go and find a woman, but you go and talk to that woman and she was like, hey, I want to beat my chest and be, you know, leave it to beaver life. And you find a woman who's down with that. Why would we condemn or attack them for that? How's that hurting anybody else? So that side of it, I don't know about women being mad at other women for doing that. As far as pitting herself against other women for the validation of male acceptance, a lot of times, you know, because I don't know, maybe y'all dwell at, I've been married for over 20 years, so I don't know what the fuck's going on in these single streets. I don't even know. You know, if my wife leave me, it's going to be a problem because I don't even know how to throw the Mac down anymore. Hey, baby, I don't even know. I need to shoot my old line. Let me get them. So I don't know what's going on in these single streets. But I've always known when I was single, way back in the 90s, when I was in the club, you know, even I ain't gonna lie, the night I met my wife, I talked some shit about another dude that was interested in her, a coworker she had. You know, and this dude had long locks, flowing locks, and I'm 6'3", and he was taller than me. And this, you know, and I'm like, yeah, that dude's corny as hell. Why are you talking to that dude? People do that. That's just a thing. Now, if that's institutionalized, if it's systematic, if it's more than her just talking shit, but she's taking action to harm or subvert other women, that's a different thing. But simply saying, hey, I'm better than that girl, or she ain't nothing, I'm so, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So anyway, I'm going to go off. Andy, you posted that too soon. I probably would have went off, but we'll never know now. What's your opinion on the amount of current media going extra hard military? What? On the amount of current media going extra hard military? That new Amazon without remorse comes to mind. Oh, military propaganda. I think the U.S. is going through some things. The United States is losing several wars on several fronts. The United States is negotiating and suing for peace in Afghanistan. In Iraq, like the United States went up and built a whole city in Iraq called the Green Zone. And they have the small territory in Iraq that they control. The United States lost the war in Iraq. It lost the war in Afghanistan. And losing a war doesn't mean you don't win a war by killing more than the other person. You can win a war and not kill one of your enemy. The war is who has their objectives secured. So the Taliban defeated the United States military using guerrilla tactics. The Iraqi insurgents not only defeated the U.S. military, the project for a new American century was subverted. So United States had the project for a new American century, or PNAC. It's over, but just go to the Wikipedia page. Was this plan for building a new expanded U.S. empire? And the Iraqi insurgents didn't just stop or fight the U.S. to a stalemate in Iraq. It greatly obstructed. The U.S. is also losing ground in Syria, in Yemen. And the only place that the U.S. is basically succeeding in is beating up on establishing bases in Africa through AFRICOM, because the corrupt leaders are just getting a payoff. So they're not fighting their way into Africa. They're buying their way in there. So, and their old bases, like Okinawa, military site, and their military base in Germany, and of course the little Caribbean nations, Haiti, they like to knock over from time to time just to get their muster up. So long story short, the United States is hurting. They invested all this money in drone technology. They invested all this money in aircraft carriers and invested all this money in nuclear submarines. And the United States built up a global military that is set up and structured to fight militaries. The U.S. military is not set up and structured to fight guerrilla insurgencies and guerrilla warfare tactics or protracted subversive conflicts. So the United States on a military level is losing. And the only thing they're succeeding at doing is murdering a lot of innocent people. So even when the United States says we've had a successful strike, they're killing innocent people. And the soldiers, the fighters, the insurgents are getting away scot-free. And every time they say we killed a leader of the Taliban, we killed a leader of ISIS, we killed this leader, 50 new leaders pop up. And then they just started making up names. As long as it sounds Muslim-y, they'd say this name, we killed this person, and nobody ever heard of this person until you came and told us. Why didn't y'all tell us ahead of time who this evil boogeyman is? And the last person we all knew was Saddam in Afghanistan. I mean, in Iraq, and I can't even remember his name. Who's the man who knocked down the towers? I can't even remember his name. But anyway, that's why the United States ego is ass hurt. The United States ego, its libido is damaged. So that's when they come with all the military propaganda. You'll notice after the Vietnam defeat and their loss in North Korea, they did the same shit. You go back to the 70s, it's all this fucking war movies, Rambo, the gallant soldiers and all these proliferation of military propaganda. When the military gets its ass handed to it overseas, they like to come back and make sympathetic stories about the people, the soldiers who went overseas to commit atrocities and war crimes, and then they come back here and struggle with life and reintegrating into society. So this ain't nothing. The United States is a perpetual war machine. It is a late stage capitalism. It is an empire. It is global. It's a rotting, rotten, weakened global empire that is soon to be displaced. So yeah, we're going to get inundated by propaganda. I just hope that we inform our community about the propaganda and try to convince as many of our people in our community as possible not to enlist into the empire's service. Arkansas, Montana, South Carolina have already opted out of federal pandemic unemployment. Those benefits in for people in Arkansas. Yep. Yeah, they're going to put the squeeze. They coming with the stick. That was the carrot. Now they coming with the stick. You better be glad my phone about to die. Okay. I am glad. I'm afraid of what you would have had done did. Prester, vaccine adverse event reporting system is a joke on purpose. Okay, if you think so. Hey, and just go talk to your relatives and your homies and the people around the way that got the vaccine, you know. James is laughing at me. Nasheed was in the American Pimp series. He went to prison in Arizona. I do believe a bad pimp that anyone who wrote a book do change his name. Right, reinvent still can't stand his bitch ass. Okay, yeah, I'm not a fan of Tariq Nasheed, and it disturbs me. It disturbs me what he did. Carl said that's not what a simp is. I guess he's from the simp representative of the simp community, and he doesn't like how we're misrepresenting him. So sorry about that, Carl. Do you feel like we as Africans have a struggle, internal race that needs as much effort to resolve as we do against other oppressive, all the other oppression we face? Yes, I do. This is unfortunate, but this is the reality that I don't think African people are exempt from. Every single liberation struggle, every single revolutionary struggle, either prior to, during, or after, had a civil war. You had the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks for the Russian Revolution. For the Chinese Revolution, you had the Chinese communists and the Chinese nationalists. In Vietnam, you had the Viet Cong and the nationalists. Even the United States American Revolution, you had a civil war that came afterwards. So when a people come under occupation, colonization, oppression, there are great divides amongst those people. And when the people first have to decide, will we continue under oppression or will we secure liberation? And when that enough people, and it doesn't take a lot, like you're not even 50, when it takes about 5 to 7% of a population to say enough of this shit. We're going to organize and commit all our time, talent, and resources to getting out from under the yoke of oppression. You're going to have a population that is so indoctrinated, sick, and loyal to the oppressor that they prefer to live in their oppressor's hell than to construct their own paradise with their people. So yes, there will be intellectual, ideological, cultural conflicts amongst any population of Africans who are under oppression and seeking liberation. And that conflict will inevitably become armed and violent. That is something you have to prepare for. It's not something you should celebrate, but I can't find a revolutionary struggle, even in Haiti. Even in Haiti, the house slaves versus the field slaves. Any movement you can identify for revolution and liberation, you're going to find internal conflicts. Even look at the Protestant Reformation. When Catholicism was challenged by the Protestants, after they beat the shit out of the Catholics, started beating the shit out of each other. So any type of social upheaval, that's just the nature of things. So yeah, we're going to have to fucking bang on these goddamn Uncle Tom, handkerchief head, sell out, new Negroes. It's not something we should celebrate. It's not something we should take lightly. It's not something we should revel in, but it's something we need to have a sober understanding of and prepare ourselves for. And maybe if we do enough to awaken our people, educate our people, to give our people the needed resources that they need, and understanding the necessity and the benefits of liberation, the greater we can expand the liberation ideology within our community, the less severe that internal conflict will be. Fool, that's BDSism. Can't stand you. See, that's what I was told by a sister who's into BDSM when I said, some people, y'all just think BDSM is sexual. I think BDSM can expand to social. Like women like to be dominated by their men outside of bed and sexual intercourse. But that's what I've heard, or that's what I suspect. Again, a lot of this is speculation. I never claim to know about relationships. I speak from pure opinion. So I'm not saying do this, or that's why I don't tell people how to get off. I don't ever come on here and tell you this is how you treat a woman or this is how you do a man. Because it's an interesting topic for me, but I ain't one to claim to have the answers. Sway. I don't have the answers to that stuff. Because it's all speculation, Should we openly struggle? Kwasi says, should we openly struggle against the internal? Yes. Before I even read, yes. Struggle against the internal race class issues that we have as African people. Or do you classify that struggle as just an effect of external oppression? It is an effect of external oppression. And yes, we have to deal with it. The coons, the sellouts, the traitors. In fact, if you're going to divide the world between people with power and people without power, those two groups have varying characteristics. And even the people in power, like the Chinese or the Europeans or the Arab oligarchs, even the people who have power and resources, who own the means of production, within those groups, there are varying characteristics. And the powerless people, the oppressed people, whether it's the brothers and sisters in Palestine, the brothers and sisters on South Central Los Angeles, the oppressed, even if you go to Ireland and the occupied people under British colonialism, you look at the oppressed or colonized people, there are various characteristics. But there are two things that you find that are universal amongst oppressed people and universal amongst people in power. And those two universal things is the people who lack power lack the capacity or willingness to deal with traitors. The people who have power deal very severely and swiftly with people who are traitors. And I don't care if that's the only Indian, good Indian is a dead Indian. The only worst thing, what did the white folks used to say during Jim Crow? The only thing worse than an N-word is an N-word lover. If you read that book Without Sanctuary, they would lynch white people too for holding court or treating white folks. So white people, in order to maintain their systems and institutions of oppression and white domination, they have to impose strict standards on other whites and give swift penalties to whites who violate certain codes. Same thing in Zionism, self-hating Jews. One of the greatest public intellectuals since Einstein is a Jewish man by the name of Noam Chomsky. He couldn't get a lecture in Israel. He's paid to lecture. He's almost 100 years old. He lectures all over the world. He doesn't get to give lectures in Israel, his quote unquote spiritual homeland, because they don't play if you don't toe the line. So the time will come in a revolutionary struggle to say you're either with us or against us, like Bush said. You're either with us or against us. So again, this is part of, if you want to have a nation, if you want to have a state, if you want to be a people who are free and have the capacity to defend ourselves from external exploitation, we got to have some level of internal accountability system. And we don't need to focus so much on punishing the traitors as we do on rewarding the people who hold to the unity. A lot of time we focus a lot on the sellouts. We got to focus. If we would do again We can reduce the level of internal strife and conflict if we who are revolutionary focus much more heavily on giving rewards to those who hold to the unity than we do to punishing those who violate it. But we got to do both, but we should emphasize one over the other. Akina, Gorilla, yes. Blaze, Fire Blaze. Bin Laden, yes. You couldn't pay me to say that name a few minutes ago. It's just, my brain locked on me because I guess it didn't want me to catch a strike. I know the algorithm is going crazy now that I didn't say that name. Natasha, how you doing, sis? Why do you think that at this point in time there's an honesty in the media about what happens in Palestine when they were never willing to tell the truth about the genocide over there? I don't know what media you're watching, sis. And I'm not saying this to be offensive, but MSNBC, ABC, the State Department in their press conference, what media? Because seriously, as far as I know, they're still lying. Now you say Democracy Now, or if you're looking at progressive media, but you have to tell me what media you're referring to. Because as far as they're still towing the line that Israel is defending itself from terrible terrorists. And Israel has a right to defend itself from terrorists. And Israel is under siege from the Palestinian and constant threat from Hamas. That's what I've been seeing in the mainstream corporate media. The progressive media going all the way back to the 40s and 50s. I used to say all the time before she passed, my grandmother's older than Israel. Israel's a relatively new nation, but since its founding, the U.S. media has told the line. So you will have to tell me what U.S. corporate media or mainstream media has used the word genocide and Palestine in the same sentence. Because that got by me. I would love to know that. I'm not asking to be facetious. I would genuinely like you to point me to that source, because I ain't seen that. Soleimani. Yeah, Soleimani, but he was a general. He was he wasn't really a terrorist. He was a legitimate actor in the war arena. He was Iranian too. But yeah, I feel you. Yes, I have. I mean, the Indonesia has been a bastard nation for a long time. But yeah, I have been following the atrocities there, and again, yes. I mean, what's to say? The native indigenous people, black folks, they are black people. They're not African. Now, all Africans are black, but not all blacks are African. But yes, I have. I should speak more on that, perhaps. Why are people so anti-vaccination this time around, or skeptical now and not before? I think the skepticism is rational because, number one, the vaccine was rushed. They literally call it Operation Lightspeed, and they're giving it away for free. And anytime somebody comes to you and say, I'm going to give it to you fast or free, you should be, that's how con men hustle. So I think the skepticism is justified. Because generally it could take years, if not decades, to develop an effective vaccine. Also, the vaccine is utilizing new technology with the RNA spikes, and it's not a true vaccine. They misnamed it because generally vaccines are attenuated viruses that help your body build immunity. That's not what I think the AstraZeneca and I think the Johnson & Johnson are true vaccines. So that's the reason it was done fast. And when you're dealing with medical science and when you're dealing with large population, and we know that the regulatory agencies granted the vaccine researchers and the vaccine companies certain assistance to allow them to bypass some of the regulatory review. They were able to concentrate and accelerate the process, which any intelligent person, even some scientists, are saying, that should give you pause. It's free, and we live in a capitalist system. So anything that's given to you free, like social media says, oh, you can sign up for a social media account for free, and they mine our data. So anything that's free under capitalism is going to make you pay some kind of way. Another reason is it has been politicized by both parties. The Democrats and the Republicans have turned a public health crisis into a political campaign platform. And so when people, depending on who they align with politically, will bypass the scientific data or or even overlook the risk or downplay the risk or create risk where none exists in order to further align themselves with their tribe. It's a tribalistic thing. I think those are the three major factors. And then the lot of the deaths and vaccine harm and negative side effects, I think, have been blown out of proportion, like the blood clots and things of that nature. And so as these various companies compete to make their vaccine the prominent vaccine, the media companies that they use for sponsorship or you pay for advertisement on will boost the negative side effects of one over the other. So, and there's a lot of misinformation around as well. So I think those are the reasons why people, some justified, some non-justified reasons, like the political or politicization or tribalism surrounding the vaccine and whether it represents liberty and all that bullshit from the Trump administration. I think that's not a valid reason for that. I got the Fire Biotech socks. I'm fully vaxxed. I'm good. I never got a flu shot in my life. I'd rather have gotten that one shot one. But point is, I'm okay. All right. So let's watch and see if Phil, he went and got the Bill Gates microchip. Right on. And Ron said he's all right. My mom's got the shot because she's older and I figure she has some surgeries. I should maybe get it too. I understand. Yeah, my aunt who's knocking on 90, she's like 87. She got the shot. She got the Pfizer 2-in-1 shot. She's 87 and she had after the second shot minor flu-like symptoms and she's had no side effects beyond that up to this point. She's doing very well. And then a lot of other people. So yeah, I think that's probably the best. What do you think of the All African People's Revolutionary Party? I think they're a great party. I think they were very sincere in their efforts, but I would criticize. I think they're a bit stagnant. I think they need to. I hate to use these terms in this day because the AARP predates the internet and social media and all that. So I don't think they've really come up to speed. It's kind of like with organizations like the All African People's Revolutionary Party and in Cobra, the reparations group. These pre-internet Black organizations never really got with the social media. They might have a little website of them, but they're not very savvy in their approach. And so that's when you have other groups, these fake groups, these Black communist groups or these ADOS groups that are pretty much were founded and organized in the social media era. And they come and basically steal or bastardize their platform and outshine them. So they're playing catch up. So I think that All African People's Revolutionary Party, I think they should make a concerted effort to recruit youth, some young blood, more tech savvy. Their tech and online presence needs to be better improved. They are known for on the ground organization and old school face-to-face contact. And I think they should sustain that and be commended for that. But I think that they really need, I hate to use this word, but you know, some rebranding and some new blood. That's what I'll say. But I have a lot of respect for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. They've managed to be around for quite a long time and avoid a lot of the corruption and internal infighting that has plagued a lot of other Black organizations, as far as I know, because I know somebody gonna jump on here and say so. But even though they have some conflicts, they've managed to keep them in-house and keep it from, you know, these large rifts that have plagued groups like the Uhuru movement, you know, having people come out to the streets and tear the group down and shit like that. How do you think we can bring some attention to their struggle? The unfortunate thing about Indonesia and Papua New Guinea is that it's on the other side of the world. And I think because the people of Papua New Guinea and in Indonesia, the way to bring it to the consciousness is you have to really demonstrate what role the Western powers play, because a Asian conflict amongst Asian people doesn't really move people in the West. So the only way to bring attention to the struggle is say, how does it impact the West, or how is the West impacting, influencing the struggle, arming the struggle, funding the struggle, and profiting from the struggle? Because Indonesia, everything from the oil, the U.S. set up the dictatorships, drove out the communists and the reformists, dating back to the Cold War. And it's also the largest Islamic country in the world, Indonesia, if my demographics are current. And so there are a lot of Muslims here. So I think it should be responsible that the Muslim country, yet another Muslim country, is committing atrocities, and the people who claim that Muslim is a religion of peace. So I would attack it in such a way to show the hand of the Western empires in the genocide, arming the Indonesian military, and also the Black Muslim and progressive Muslim community needs to be called out for not engaging this struggle, because it's their people, their fellow Muslims in the religion of peace, committing these atrocities. Those are the two things I would recommend. Vox, okay, now Natasha, yeah, Vox and Democracy Now! Have always been more progressive and left-leaning media, so it's nothing new. They've all Amy Goodman has always been since it was found. When did Democracy in the 90s? Since the early 90s, Amy Goodman has even been attacked by the Israeli media. So she's always snitched on Israel. So again, Vox is another progressive or left-leaning network. So the mainstream corporate media is towing the line. So Ron, I feel you, bro. I was a little skeptical. The only reason I think it went through, I remember holding down my children to take theirs for school, and I had to take mine, man. Okay. Okay, Natasha. Oh, yeah, I'm going to read this out loud. You were right. That's all we got to know. You're right. But on MSNBC, there was an interview with a Palestinian that was able to give pushback to the narrative. Yeah, that was done more for ratings and drama. But I'm sure MSNBC, they did this with the push for war in Iraq after 9/11. They would have dozens of people come on there to advocate for war, and then they'd have one anti-war person. So for every anti-war voice, they'd have like 24 to 30 people who come and advocate for the war. And I'm sure if they have a Palestinian on to give the Palestinian plea and to talk about the plight of the Palestinian people, I promise you, either before or after that, they had an Israeli or a U.S. military official come out to contradict it immediately. So, but I don't watch MSNBC or corporate propaganda for any other reason but to expose it for that it's lying. Like KRS-One said, when you watch television, just keep saying they lying to me. I guess I've never seen them allow Palestinians have a voice, not as far as I've seen. Yeah, and believe it or not, there's a book called Gorillas. Nope. Where the hell is the book? I can't remember his name. I can't find the book. Forgive me. Anyway, there's a book that oh, here it is. This is the book. Let me just show you this, just to kind of tell you. Just because it's a Palestinian, don't expect them to tell the truth. Let's see. Let me share this book. Can I magnify this? How does the computer work? Oh yeah. Wow. Okay. This is Gorillas. Journey into the Insurgent World by John Lee Anderson. He writes a lot of books about asymmetric warfare. But anyway, in this book, he goes and talks to some Palestinian insurgents, and they talk in a great detail about the Uncle Tom sellout Palestinians. There's a lot of Palestinians who work with the Israeli government, the Mossad, and the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, against their own people. So I'm just saying that to say, I don't even remember. It's been years since I read this book, but there's a chapter in there where they talk to some insurgents and they talk about the sellouts. And so I'm saying all that to say, if you see a Palestinian talking about the conflict, don't assume that they're speaking in the interest or speaking on behalf of their own people. They could be an Uncle Tom Palestinian. That's all I want to say. Give me a chance. Let me get out of here. That's a good book. Diallo, is it any truth to blacks in Palestine being oppressed by the Palestinians? Yes, there are many Palestinians under African descent who were there before the Israeli or Zionist occupation and colonization of Palestine. And the Palestinians did treat the Africans or black Palestinians as second-class citizenship and continue to be to mistreat or treat them as second-class or third-class citizens in Palestine. And this phenomenon of Africans living in Islamic or Arab states being treated harshly, suffering racism and discrimination is universal. When Dr. Khalid Muhammad made his Hajj to Mecca, he saw Arab men beating their African servants and even intervened and almost was expelled from the country as he went on his Hajj, because he was surprised because the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and his father Farrakhan told him that Islam was a religion of peace, and if people convert to Islam, it will make all men brothers and sisters. And he went there as a member of that cult and under the delusion that anybody who converted to Islam would be a brother to any other Muslim. So this is universal across the Islamic world. And also, if you go to places with large Palestinian communities, there are nations in Latin America or South America, and even cities here like Detroit that have large Palestinian communities, and you'll find that they have a lot of hostile relationships with the black community. So that's another thing. So even when people come here, when we're dealing with the Palestinian situation, or we're dealing with the plight of the refugees from Honduras and other Latin American countries, we can look at all of those situations that they have black or African populations, people of African descent, or members of the African diaspora who are treated unjustly, discriminated against. Even in our beloved socialist utopia of Cuba, black folks are still being made to sit in the back of the socialist bus. So that's a reality. Anti-blackism is the world's only universal ideology, or that's what that was Dr. Bobby Wright. Anti-blackism is the planet's only universal ideology. That's something we have to be aware of as we advocate for or express solidarity. We should always bring that up. Whenever I'm in mixed group talking about justice and freedom, the first thing I say, they say, well, we got to fight for immigrants' rights, or we got to fight for discrimination at the border, and we got to stop militarization of the border. I ask my Mexican brothers and sisters, what's your position on the plight of Afro-Mexicanos, black people in Mexico? Or people come in the Dominican Republic, oh, we're trying to come here. I'm like, what's your position on Dominican Republic's treatment of Haiti? So thanks for bringing that up, Mark. We don't want to overshadow that. That should be at the forefront. Yes, I agree. It is awful what's happening in West Papua. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Social media. We can't really. Social media is not corporate media because you get to see people's voices, even though it's over the social media overlords are corporate. The people creating the content as the voice of the people. I think if more people were properly informed about the Zionist atrocities, I think that their opinions would differ. But then that could be also, you have to look at Christian Zionists who believe that the nation of Israel has to be reestablished, and the mound, the temple has to be erected on the mound in order for Jesus to return, and believe in that stupid ass prophecy. So there's a lot of mess over there as to why the U.S. evangelical Christians, the United States, which is traditionally an anti-Semitic country, has such unyielding support for Israel. Part of it's geopolitical, but a large part of it is also evangelical, dispensational, religious, end-time religious beliefs that they have. We could talk more about that later. Opinions of the black left, not to be confused with black liberals, mostly black Marxists, etc. Yeah, I get that a lot. People call me a liberal. When I say I'm a leftist, they gasp because I am a leftist. I am a radical leftist. I am a far leftist. I am not a liberal. I am anti-liberal, but a lot of people don't understand that terminology. They think all liberals are leftists and all leftists are liberals. So I appreciate people giving that clarity. But it's 9:45. I got to wrap things up. Natasha asked, do I think the GOP will truly split? No, because it's about the money. It's all about the money. So get this money. Ain't shit funny. So no, I don't believe the GOP will split. The GOP will purge people who don't toe the line. But as far as having a third party, remember they were talking that same shit when the Tea Party emerged. There was going to be a split, and there was no split. And they even said that, talked about that under Reagan, because Reagan was a hyper conservative, and he was considered a right wing radical. And they were talking about the mainstream Republicans, who are in the mainstream or the old school bureaucrats. Every few election cycles they talk about the Republicans splitting, but they're not going to split because that'll fuck up the money, and that's the only reason they're in politics. So no, they're not going to split. But it's good for the corporate media to pretend like there's a conflict, because the corporate media can't report on real issues like the ecosystem collapsing and the genocides across the world. So they drum up this bullshit of these petty rich white folks bickering with each other over bullshit. Sean Carter, how can anyone get an experimental shot for? Number one, it's not an experimental shot. It is tested and verified. Even though there's some corners were cut, it has been peer reviewed, it has been tested, and the results have been verified. So it doesn't qualify as experimental. It is a new technology, a relatively new, but not brand new. It's been used before, and it's not considered experimental because it's been through peer review and through trials. They were attenuated trials, and they were hurried trials that weren't as expansive as normal, but it's the experimental state. It's beyond experimental. So it's not an experimental shot. But let me take y'all and do some motherfucking math with y'all. These people talking about, it has a 99% recovery rate, which isn't true. Because a recovery means your body returns to the state that it was before the illness. And many people who have contracted coronavirus, like my sister has a good friend who contracted the virus, recovered, and then contracted the virus again. And now they're telling her that her lungs are working at less than 15% capacity, and she'll need to eventually get a lung transplant. So let's say, what's 1%? Okay, let's see here. Hold on. Let's do this. Let's pretend like what you're saying, Sean, is true. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow. So 1%, there are 7 billion people in the world. It's more people than that. But 1% of 7 billion, let me show y'all so y'all know I ain't making this shit up as I go along. Percentage calculator. Let's zoom in. So this ain't me. 1% of 7 billion is what? 70 million people. And you think, hey, fuck it. So we can get hamburgers and go to see shitty musicians in t-shirts. You're willing to sacrifice 70 million people? Really, it's more than that, but I'm just playing with I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say, because for every person that dies from coronavirus, there is a dozen or more people who will have lifelong illnesses and lifelong respiratory issues, neurological and cognitive issues from this virus. But let's say everybody who gets sick of it gets sick, fully recovers. You still got 70 million dead. And with 70 million dead, you literally have hundreds of millions of people who are going to have chronic illnesses. And when you have hundreds of millions of people with chronic illnesses, that means they can't work, They can't contribute to the society. And we have to train and equip a whole generation of people to take care of these people and to help these people. And their lives will, their quality of life will be greatly reduced. So yes, if a highly infectious virus has a 99% recovery rate, and you're being dishonest by saying it's a 99% recovery rate, you're saying it's a 1% death rate, which is not the same as a 99% recovery rate. What percentage of people who get the illness fully recover without any long-term symptoms? What's more experimental? So I agree with people who are skeptical. The government lies, but don't fucking come with this dismissive position. Like, fortunately, no one in my family has died, but my sister's one of her childhood friends can't even breathe on her own, and she recovered twice. She recovered from coronavirus, and she has lifelong damage to her lungs. A woman who could go can't even walk half a block without having to rest. But anyway, I got to wrap this up. I think that's a good note. Y'all got me out here speaking because I think Dr. Fauci, I think that the gain of function testing in the Wuhan lab, I think there are some people, there should be international criminal charges brought against the scientists and the funders who did the gain of function testing. I think that this is the release of the coronavirus is due to severe negligence on behalf of certain members of the scientific and research community. I think that this could have been avoided. Not only the spread of the disease, how far and rapidly it spread, the deaths could have been avoided. And I think there should be hearings. I think that there is a story that's being suppressed about the gain of function testing to make these viruses more viral. And I think that people came out when the virus was first released, talking about what do they call it? 5G towers and the pandemic pretty much made people unwilling, to ask critical questions about the origins of this disease, how it became so viral. Like, there's nothing new. Coronavirus has been around. That's why they call this COVID-19. Why is this particular strand of the virus so? And I don't buy the whole eating bat flesh spread this virus or the wet markets. I think there is something to do with the Wuhan labs and the gain of function testing. I don't think that's been investigated enough because the story's been repressed due to, I think that some people in prominent positions, including Fauci, have a lot to answer for. So you can go and look up yourself, gain of function in the Wuhan lab. Anyway, I'm going to end on that note. I appreciate everyone. I'm sorry, Sean and Prester. I got a couple of brothers who want to talk. Maybe we can talk and do a Q&A with some people that want to talk about this further. Okay. All right. Just playing some Anyway, I got to put the thing on the thing. Anyway, I got a few announcements. You can support the BroDiallo program, the BroDiallo media empire. You can become a Patreon supporter. Can y'all hear me over this music? I'm sorry. You can become a Patreon supporter. I wouldn't be here doing the media, doing the radio broadcast, the book reviews, and the other content that you're here for if not for my Patreon supporters. I appreciate you, And if you become a Patreon supporter, I will be putting some type of appreciation gift in the mail for less than a cup. It will cost, I sound like those feed the children thing. For less than a cup of coffee, you can help sustain the BroDiallo program. For less than a cup of coffee a month. Then you can go to CashApp, send me some ducats through CashApp. Greatly appreciate. Also at Venmo, at BroDiallo, all BroDiallo across the board, except for Patreon. That's it. I'm going to be reviewing. I got the book review for Black on Black Power and Who Stole the Soul. I got 2 book reviews. So look for, starting not this Friday, but starting next week, the book reviews will be back. Weekly book reviews. Sorry that I fell off on that. The last book I did was, what was that? The Iceman's Inheritance. But anyway, so we're getting back on the BroDiallo show. BroDiallo Q&A. I'm sure to have some great guests lined up for Q&A. So y'all don't just have to listen to my point of view on things. And not everybody that comes on the Q&A is somebody I see eye to eye with. If not, just go to YouTube, like and subscribe. YouTube, like, share, subscribe with your friends, lovers, allies, and enemies. I think that's it. But like I said, everybody that comes on to co-host a Q&A with me is not people I see eye to eye with. You can go see the Hebrew Israelite I had on here for my last Q&A. If you're into such things, if you like to see black folks not getting along together. But shout out to Brian Long. That's my homie. I've known him for quite some time. But anyway, that's it. Thank you to everyone who had questions, comments, criticisms, points of views, and even those who don't agree. But yes, Kandake, you can contribute from another country. Far as I know, we can always try. But yes, I think I do. Yes, I have received contributions. Shout out to Korea. I've gotten contributions from Korea, the UK, Nigeria. Man, I get so much love from Nigeria. So Nigeria is going to be my first post-quarantine stop. I'm on my way to Nigeria. Shout out to the Kuti family for extending the invitation. So that's going to be my first stop. So sooner than later, hopefully, I'll be doing some broadcasts from Lagos. Anyway, so yes, I get love and support from outside the country. Anyway, y'all have a good evening. Thank you for coming through, and I'll see y'all BroDiallo broadcast Monday radio, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time on Q4.org if you're outside of Chicago, and you can catch us on the AM signal if you're inside of Chicago. Oh, and you can also get merch at AfricanWorldOrder.org. Get your BroDiallo broadcast t-shirt, BroDiallo show shit. AfricanWorldOrder.com.